Ground beef in the 1970s was survival food. When beef prices jumped 30% during the early recession, when gas shortages made grocery trips strategic missions, when paychecks had to stretch impossibly far, ground beef became the foundation of American family cooking. The 1970s housewife could make 1 pound of ground beef feed a family of 6 through ingenuity born from necessity. These recipes combined Depression-era creativity with 1970s convenience culture, fresh ingredients with canned soups, homemade techniques with frozen shortcuts. Let us walk through 11 ground beef recipes that defined 1970s cooking but vanished as times improved. Let us step into that world. Hamburger gravy over mashed potatoes was the ultimate stretcher. 1 pound of ground beef could feed 6 people. Brown the meat in a cast-iron skillet. Create a roux right in that beef fat. Stir in flour until golden, then add milk until it transformed into thick, peppery gravy studded with meat. Ladled over a mountain of buttery mashed potatoes, this hit your stomach like comfort in a bowl. It meant Mom could make dinner happen even when Dad's paycheck did not stretch far enough. The gravy soaked into those potatoes, creating pockets of savory richness that made you forget you were eating a budget meal. Porcupine meatballs got their name from the uncooked white rice mixed into the ground beef that poked out during cooking, looking like tiny quills. Popular at church potlucks and PTA dinners across Middle America, these brought communities together. You would combine ground beef with uncooked rice, minced onion, and a beaten egg, rolling them into golf ball-sized spheres. The magic happened when you nestled them into thick tomato sauce made from Campbell's condensed soup. As they simmered, the rice absorbed the tomatoey liquid, expanding and pushing through the meat. The result was tender meatballs with a unique texture somewhere between a stuffed pepper and a meatloaf. Tater tot casserole was where the 1970s convenience culture reached its peak. This dish, affectionately called hot dish in Minnesota, combined ground beef, cream of mushroom soup, and those golden frozen potato cylinders. Brown your beef with onions, spread it in a 9x13 pan, blanket it with condensed soup straight from the can, then create a geometric pattern of frozen tots across the top. 40 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit transformed this into a bubbling masterpiece. The sound of your fork breaking through that crunchy potato crust into the savory center was the dinner bell of a generation. It showed up at every church basement potluck, every funeral reception, every neighborhood gathering. American goulash wasn't real goulash. Calling it that would make a Hungarian chef weep. But this was American chop suey, the one-pot wonder that saved weeknight dinners when Mom worked late. You'd brown ground beef with diced onions until everything caramelized together. Then dump in elbow macaroni, canned tomatoes, and whatever vegetables were hiding in the crisper drawer. Everything cooked together in one skillet, the pasta soaking up those tomatoey, beefy juices. The beauty was its flexibility. Green peppers, if you had them, corn if you didn't, maybe some shredded cheese on top if payday was recent. Beef and cabbage skillet became mainstream during the mid-1970s recession. At 15 cents a pound, cabbage could bulk up a half-pound of ground beef into a meal for 5. You would start by browning ground beef with onions in your trusty electric skillet, that avocado-colored wedding gift getting daily use. Once the meat rendered its fat, in went thick wedges of cabbage, sizzling and wilting in the beef drippings. A splash of Worcestershire sauce, some salt and pepper, maybe a can of tomatoes if you were feeling flush. The cabbage cooked down into sweet, tender ribbons that absorbed every bit of meaty flavor, transforming $1.50 worth of vegetables into something that tasted rich and satisfying. Shipwreck casserole had a name straight out of a church cookbook. Someone looked at ground beef, uncooked rice, layers of vegetables, and canned soup, and thought, let's bake this together. The name came from the appearance, everything thrown together like supplies salvaged from a shipwreck. You would layer raw ground beef in the bottom of a casserole dish, cover it with uncooked rice, add layers of sliced potatoes and onions, then top it all with tomato soup mixed with water. Covered and baked for 2 hours, the ingredients melded into a complete meal. Opening that casserole dish released steam, and the smell of a complete dinner made from throwing everything in one pan. Mock stroganoff appeared when beef stroganoff was too expensive for regular families. The classic Russian dish called for beef tenderloin, sour cream, and mushrooms. The 1970s version used ground beef, condensed mushroom soup, and sour cream if you could afford it. Brown. The ground beef with onions, add a can of cream of mushroom soup, stir in sour cream at the end, and serve it over egg noodles. The result wasn't authentic, but it captured something of the original's creamy, savory appeal at a fraction of the cost. This represented the 1970s approach to aspirational cooking. You couldn't afford the real thing, so you created a version that approximated it. Stuffed peppers were streamlined in the 1970s, turning a special occasion dish into weeknight cooking. You would halve bell peppers lengthwise, remove the seeds and membranes, and create edible boats. They were parboiled briefly. The stuffing combined brown ground beef with cooked rice, usually minute rice for speed, canned tomato sauce, diced onions, and whatever seasonings your family preferred. The pepper halves were stuffed full and arranged upright in a baking dish. They baked until the peppers turned tender and slightly charred at the edges. The final touch was mandatory. Shredded mozzarella cheese melted across the top during the last 10 minutes. Salisbury steak made 1 pound of ground beef look and taste like expensive steaks. The trick was in the binding. Breadcrumbs, egg, and a splash of milk transformed ordinary ground beef into individual portions that looked substantial. Shaped by hand into oval patties, these were pan-fried until golden brown, then set aside while onions cooked down into sweet caramelized perfection. The gravy was built right in the same pan using beef drippings, flour, and beef broth. Smart housewives would make extra patties and freeze them for quick meals later in the week. The children thought they were getting steak for dinner. This was working-class steak made with love and necessity in equal measure. Hamburger soup stretched a pound of beef into multiple servings. Ground beef, vegetables, and a rich broth all simmered together to create the ultimate cold-weather comfort food. The secret was letting the ground beef soak up all those savory flavors from the broth, carrots, onions, and celery. Toss in a handful of barley or pasta to bulk it up. A splash of tomato sauce or diced tomatoes added the perfect tangy kick. The leftovers tasted even better the next day. This was thrifty cooking, turning 1 pound of beef into enough soup to feed a family for 2 nights. Beef and rice casserole was the ultimate clean-out-the-pantry dinner. Brown ground beef, mixed with uncooked rice, canned vegetables, and condensed soup, then baked together until the rice absorbed the liquid and everything melded into a complete meal. The formula was flexible. Cream of mushroom, cream of chicken, or cream of celery soup all worked. Whatever canned vegetables were in the pantry got thrown in. The rice cooked directly in the casserole, absorbing all those beefy, soupy flavors. This was set-it-and-forget-it cooking. Assemble it in 15 minutes, put it in the oven, and do other things for an hour while dinner cooked itself. What defined these recipes was their purpose. They were not about culinary achievement, they were about feeding families when money was tight. when both parents worked, when inflation made every grocery trip painful. The recipes combined old-fashioned techniques with modern convenience products. Grandma's Depression-era knowledge of stretching meat met the 1970s embrace of canned soups and frozen vegetables. These dishes disappeared as economic conditions improved, as cooking culture shifted toward fresh ingredients and away from processed foods. By the 1980s and 1990s, these recipes were fading from circulation. But for people who ate these meals in the 1970s, the memories remain vivid. The taste of hamburger gravy soaking into mashed potatoes, the texture of porcupine meatballs with rice poking through, the satisfaction of a tater tot casserole that fed everyone on a tight budget. These were not just recipes. They were survival strategies wrapped in home cooking. They represented an era when American families had to be creative, resourceful, and practical about feeding themselves. For those who remember eating these dishes, the nostalgia is not just about food. It is about the families who gathered around tables to eat them, the mothers who created them from limited resources, the era when making do was just part of life.